Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This week we're gonna keep going painting on a slightly bigger format compared to the other weeks. Come here. And last week we worked on this little thumbnails of colors. We decided which one we were gonna go with, and then I've lost the thumbnails, but I did take a picture of it. So this week we're gonna block in the paint and the colors on the actual painting. So let's see how it goes, and thank you for watching. Bye. Okay, let's get started. This week we are going to be painting what we can call the block in of the painting. Blocking in is a stage that usually happens even when we draw something. It's very important to sketch down the most essential parts of an image, so to define proportions. And in drawing, for example, the blocking in is the initial stage of the drawing where we figure out our shapes, proportions, and the relationships and the design of the image. For painting, because 2 weeks ago we already did our sketch and we already did a sort of pick out, which is an underpainting using just burnt umber and raw umber, and we've already defined our drawing. But we take a step further and now we start to block in the colors on top of what we have done. This should be a little easier, and I think I'm finding it easier because I have already taken the big decisions of the color relationships on my thumbnails last week. So we're basically now trying to nail those color relationships on the bigger painting and the shapes, the major shapes that we want to define in the painting. And we are basically painting just flat geometrical shapes, and we can look at the composition as just an abstraction. We don't really need to consider any detail. At this point, we just have to look at the big shapes. While we are sketching down the colors and the shapes, we are also trying to understand how the edges and the divisions between these flat shapes work one with the other, and also the priority, which shapes are in front of what. So it's basically like looking at a flat paper theater show where all the characters are just cut off of paper and who goes in front of who, and that defines a little bit of the space that we're trying to paint. This stage is very important because we're trying to also define what's essential in the painting, what we really need in order to describe that scene. In painting, as in drawing, it's always easier to add details, but it's very difficult to remove them and go back to the original shapes. Even if with oil we have a lot more freedom because we can scrape off parts of the paintings while it's still wet. While I was doing this part of the painting, it was also a good way to reflect a little bit more on the narrative of this painting. And I did come up with a title for it, and the title is gonna be Domesticated, because I'm trying to represent this toddler. The idea is that the figure in the center will be hiding in a darker spot of the kitchen. All the kitchen around will be very luminous and very bright. And I'm gonna use all these pastels colors, these bright yellows and mints. And instead, the kid is gonna be a darker pink, darker greens, darker grape greens. And the kid is gonna be hiding also behind the table. So all these things are important to define now and the way they work with each other, because the thumbnails were good to establish the broader color relationships, but now that we're applying the color on the painting, there's some areas that needs to be worked out a little bit more, especially, for example, the way the kitchen rug goes behind the table and the colors that I'm going to choose there. Also, while I was blocking in the colors, I did take a big decision that was to paint the shadows yellows, while in my thumbnails they were this kind of sepia brownish color, and the sepia brown was a good color to orchestrate everything together and blend all the colors together. But now the choice of going bright yellow, it's a little bit more complex to balance all the colors, but I think that it adds strangeness to the piece. I was thinking, as long as my lights are lighter than my shadows, the piece will be okay. For me, the theme of the domestic life is very important as a mom, as a woman, as a partner, and especially now that we are going through this long lockdowns. We are all like animals caged in our own houses. We don't spend a lot of time outside. I don't know if you had time to spend with a toddler or you have a kid or not, but I just want to say that this is my first kid, so for me everything is new. I just want to say that you really see how human beings are these wild animals. I believe that the way we have protected ourselves in domesticated life, in family life, this has been happening since probably agricultural. So we're talking about a long time that we have been fencing ourselves inside, in our houses, in our homes. And all our life really rotates around the fact that we don't want to be exposed to nature, and we are trying to regulate our social life to create a very safe environment for our kids, especially with the lockdown, of course. But I see lots of moms and dads just screaming at kids here in Italy, especially. Just saying, don't touch that, it's dirty, don't put your hands in the mouth, don't do this, don't do that. Lots of rules, and most of them are really not necessary, I think. And of course, I don't expect us to grow kids in the jungle, but I think that we are going a little bit extreme now. After all, we are still animals and we do need the freedom. I'm really trying to get to that idea. So for me to paint the environment of the house very clean, very geometrical, with strong perspective, mostly cool colors, and even almost fluo yellow colors for the shadows, just to show the fact that we are somehow detached from our environment and our reality is becoming more and more artificial. This is a way of shielding ourselves, but at the same time is also creating this hidden energy inside people, and especially with kids, you see them because they don't care about rules, especially the 2 years old, 3 years old, this age. They'll say no to anything. They really question every and each rule. They are actually there to test all the limits of adults, parents, the limits of the environment, the objects around them. So they want to touch, they want to smell, they want to taste, they want to get dirty. So this scene of this kid, it's just still like everything looks almost like a dollhouse. The kid is like a doll, the hands down, the shoulder kind of down. Everything is clean and organized. This is actually a really interesting subject for me because I have plenty of references and they say paint what you know. What do I know right now? Most of the time, I am spending my days in the house, as I was saying, with my family. I love the house, but still, this is a shield place. This is a domesticated life for wild animals. It's fun to represent that, and the way to represent it for me just need the slight things to be off for an image to show you that things are not as you think they are. We're just playing in the house or dancing with the colored lights, and then my husband is just playing goofy or dancing, and he does a really weird face. And all of a sudden, it looks like a horror movie. I mean, I can take a picture of him doing that, and it looks like a horror movie, but it's just a dad joking around. And so I think that contrast is very interesting. I would rather spend my time painting things like that than looking for models and composing images that are kind of like a theater, aesthetic theater of what looks good or what seems interesting to me. I think that way of working would bring me far away from my family and from my life. As an artist and as a mom, you always have to deal with the fact that when you're painting, that you are taking away from your kid. And even if I feel like I deal with it pretty well because deep down I am a little selfish, and I know that I need that time to preserve myself and to be a good mom, to be a good person, to learn about myself so that I can teach to my kid. I also know that lots of other mothers have to deal with the feel of feeling guilty. Oftentimes, painting, I was talking with other friends, artists, and we all agree on the fact that it's a hard profession. I mean, some people do it as a hobby, some people do it as work, but if you do it independently from the reason and the final objective, it's still a really demanding activity. And oftentimes we artists find ourselves not being happy with what we do. And probably because as creative people, we're all doomed to research and look and push forward, push the boundaries of what we are doing, what we are creating, because we want to find something more. We want to understand something that we already don't know. So it's basically a search of the unknown. And as beautiful as this can be, it's a search that doesn't really land you anywhere, because you're always moving forward, not forward, but somewhere else, just moving. It's important sometimes to just realize that we also need to enjoy where we are and the findings that we are discovering. And I think that this painting is doing it for me. I'll see you next Sunday, and we'll talk a little bit more about this painting. Bye-bye.